We're so grateful that you chose to be with us for this program. You know, there comes a time in the life of all of us where the things that once satisfied us, the things that once brought us a sense of insight or a sense of pleasure, don't bring us the awareness that we want. We strive a lot for the things that perish, as Jesus once said to us. We strive for objects, and we strive for money. We strive for some sort of physical achievement in our life, always working for things that we might have a sense of ourselves. I really think that possessions mean to us, this is what I am. This is who I've become. I think that's why we attach a lot of importance upon possessions. But there comes a time, I think, in the life of every one of us, and it may not be in this lifetime for everyone who's watching us, and it may be for you right now in this lifetime that you are in, where you begin to start to question, what am I doing with my life experience? Am I using my life experience in a way where I can take the things that I've gained on this experience of life and take them other places with me for my growth and my development? Or am I just gathering objects and am I just gathering possessions and securities around me and not really finding anything about myself in my own life? This is the most important thing that we are involved in. That is our life. Our life is very important, and yet we tend to squander it away on things. I think we get a sense of that desperateness sometimes within ourselves. We get a sense that I'm not living my life the way I could be living it, or it's not fulfilling me the way it should. And then we start to think, well, something's missing inside. Something's missing inside here, and I can't find it out there in the world, and I can't find it in objects, so I'll turn to something that a lot of people call religion. And they get involved in religion. Religion tells them what they can do, what they can't do. They sit around and they listen to the limitations and the boxed-in attitudes. You're a sinner. If you don't do what you're told here, you'll burn in hell there. If you're good here, you'll go to heaven there. And we stay there for a while. There's nothing wrong with staying there for a while. But when those things don't answer the questions of our life that are important, the whys, the hows of our life, then we have to make some other changes. And that is the difference between an individual who has become deeply religious in a physical way, a mental way, an emotional way, and the difference between a person who is attuning themselves to their spirituality. And being spiritual is something different. It is not something that is artificial. It is not something that you can practice in a phony kind of way. It is something that you come to. It's something that means something to you. It's looking inside of yourself and finding the part of you that has always been eternal, that has always been there for you and for me. There comes a time in the life of all of us when spirituality is more important to us than anything. When we start to really walk that spiritual path. When we start to ask the question, what does it mean to be spiritual? Am I spiritual because I seem to be generous? Am I spiritual because I seem to talk like I am? Who is a spiritual person? We've had a lot of very interesting people come and touch the planet Earth, haven't we? I mean, some real beautiful people. People who were average people until they found their own spirituality, their own spiritual path within them. We know who they are. We've been taught by them. They were not more knowledgeable and they were not more divine than you or me, but they had one thing that we don't. They did one thing that we refuse to do. We've had such people as Jesus and Buddha, Lao-Tzu, Elijah, many of them. And some people look at them as prophets. I look at them as masters because they mastered themselves. They were a master over their own life. They were spiritual. They were not dogmatic. They were not mental. They were not willful. They were spiritual. And the Spirit flowed from them in the form of compassion and love. What is it that makes a person spiritual? It's not the church you go to. It's not the things that you talk about that you say you believe in. Being spiritual is so different from what we have been taught. I go to bookstores often. There's one in Los Angeles that I like to go to a lot. And there's books everywhere, thousands of books. And in every book is a different spiritual pathway from someone who has found their own inner way. And people think if they read all these books, if they memorize all the jargon in them, that somehow they'll find their spirituality the same way. We've made it so complicated. We've made it so difficult on ourselves. Spirituality is found in going back to simplicity, in becoming simple again. Jesus was a very simple person. Buddha was a very simple person. They did not need to have other people take their teachings and make books out of them or try to diagram their discourses and analyze what they said. They taught us very simple things. Jesus said such beautiful things like, unless you return or become as a child, you will not be able to enter the kingdom of heaven. Simply saying, unless you let yourself become simple, you will not be able to find the truth. I want to give you some simple ideas. I want to help you make that bridge across yourself. The bridge from maybe the mental, emotional, material side of yourself over to the spiritual side. And the teaching is quite simple. One of the most powerful of all teachings you or I will ever get involved in is the simplest. It's called forgiveness. But we have some very awkward and crazy ideas about forgiveness. We look at forgiveness as something like a gesture, a magnanimous gesture on our part, something we bestow upon some poor person who has insulted us or abused us or done something that we feel is wrong. So we feel this gesture within ourselves, this egotism to bestow our forgiveness upon them, while in our minds there are strings attached. We all know, we've all forgiven this way. I'll forgive you this time, but don't ever let that happen again, baby. Or, I'm not ready to forgive you yet. I'm still mad. And what we do is we kind of keep that person over here. I'm still mad at you, and I'll get to you. And when I'm not mad at you anymore, then I'll tell you. But right now, I'm going to hold anger and hostility towards you. And that's another way of revenge, of just being vengeful towards that person, of keeping them on the hook. Let's take a look at forgiveness. Why is it so important? Forgiveness is essential. It is absolutely essential. You can read all the metaphysical, mystical literature in the world, but if you haven't mastered forgiveness, it will do you no good at all, because all that is mental and emotional concepts. Forgiveness does not work from the mental, emotional side of us. You see, the reason forgiveness is essential is because it works right from here, from the heart, from the very heart of us as individuals. And it is in the heart where God is. That is the threshold. This is why Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." He didn't say, "Blessed are pure in mind, blessed are the knowledgeable, blessed are the emotional." He said, "Blessed are the pure in heart." The person who takes the time to cleanse their heart, that their mind might see through their heart. And that is the important thing we need to work with. We forget that. It is essential that we forgive because it brings us right to the threshold of our heart. And when we are there, our very perception of life changes. There's no way we can look at a person out of anger when we work from the heart. There's no way we can perceive life as a calculated, cold, and cruel thing. We begin to see life for what it is. It's an expression of ourselves. It's simply a part of us going out into life. Forgiveness is essential because it releases us from the bonds of our own limitations and our own pain. Now the next question obviously would be then, how do I forgive? How does a person forgive, especially after a lifetime of not forgiving for so long? I could give you words, but words really don't mean anything. And I don't like to give definitions in this case because being definitive in this example won't help us either. It becomes a mental, emotional concept. But I can give you the highest attitude that you could ever carry. And that is that forgiveness is compassion. Jesus talked about compassion more than anything in his life. Forgiveness being non-judgmental and compassionate. And the reason he did this was because it is essential to our spiritual path. Anything else is a mental and emotional manipulation on our part. There are many people in this life who are going to do things that are painful, that are unhappy, that cause great misery to themselves and other people. Ours is not to condemn them or to berate them for what they've done, but to seek to understand them. Why do people do what they do? Instead of making them a bad person or someone who we condone a good person, people are just people. Ours is to have a merciful attitude. Blessed are the merciful, as Jesus said, for they shall obtain what? Mercy. And we need it. All of us need it. I need forgiveness. You need forgiveness. But how are we going to receive it if we're not willing to give it? Interesting thing about life. It does not give us any more than what we are, what we're willing to offer to life from the depths of ourselves. Now, the last step I want to share with you on forgiveness in this discourse is a difficult step. And I don't give it to you out of reservation. I just give it to you because I know it could strike a chord in you that seems to be the opposite of what you've been taught. But I want you to hear this, because if you practice this step, it will be the most significant step you will ever make in your life. Now hear me. We are never dealing with other people in life. We are never dealing with other people's problems in life. We are never dealing with externals in life. Always remember, in life, we are always dealing with ourselves. And when we find ourselves in a position where someone has hurt us, the first person, the very first person that has to be forgiven is ourselves. We always must forgive ourselves. Now I hear people saying, how can I forgive myself first? I didn't do anything. He did it to me. I question this. Listen to me and pay strict attention inside yourself. If I am hurt by what you do, then it has become my mistake, my error. Why is it that you can't make a mistake and I not allow myself to feel abused or hurt? How many times have we seen another person's mistake, blown it out of proportion, and made a bigger deal out of it than it was? Later on, we look over our shoulder and we think, you know, if that happened to me again, I wouldn't make such a big deal out of it. Forgive yourself first. Jesus made a comment once. He said, blessed is he who's not offended in me. Blessed is the person who can listen to these teachings and understand them without being hurt and offended. No matter what other people will do in life, there will be those who will do things that seem to be right or wrong, good or bad. Yours is to forgive yourself first. If you are offended, then be forgiving quickly. Forgive yourself. And realize that the person who is doing the thing that he is doing that seemed to be painful is only working out of his own self-esteem. And maybe that self-esteem is low. Maybe that self-awareness is low. But if you forgive yourself, you can offer compassion. You can offer love to that person. You could actually teach that person something. Taking the time to work with these principles takes effort and consistency and love. You have to really want to do this, walk this path. There is an old saying, and it's an ancient one. It's a very beautiful saying, very true. Hate never yet dispelled hate in this world. Only love dispels hate. This is the law, ancient and inexhaustible. Follow it. Clear the way quickly within yourself. Simple truths are the most profound, and they are also the most difficult. Forgiveness is one of those very profound concepts in life that changes our life and motivates our life on the spiritual path. If you're an individual who's had enough of the religious jargon, you've been told how bad you are, you want something more, you want the spirit of the law as well as the law itself, then practice the simplicity of forgiveness. It's one of the most essential, one of the most beautiful endeavors you will ever come to. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Thank you. Welcome to this segment of Aspire. Our theme on this program, as you know, has been forgiveness, and we have with us truly one of the most joyful, blissful, and loving people we've ever had on this program. Ashlananda is with us from the Self-Realization Center. All of you are familiar with this beautiful book, the autobiography of Yogananda. I read it when I was in college. I'm sure most of you have read it. But self-realization is far more than just a book or a place that people go to. It's actually a way of life. And we have one of their distinguished brothers with us to talk to us about forgiveness. And I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you very much, Greg. It's a pleasure to be with you.
What is the necessity for forgiveness? We talked about it a little earlier. Why do we need to forgive so much?
I think that's a question that probably every one of us asks ourselves, because if someone has done something to us, someone has hurt us, whether that hurt be real or imagined, we obviously say, why should I forgive that person? He should be the one forgiving me. So why should we forgive those who hurt us? There's really a very good reason for it. And I'd like to tell you a little true story which brings this point out. I was talking to a friend of mine some time ago, and he told me that he and a colleague were driving to a business appointment. They had never been to this place before, and so they missed their turn. They came up, they were supposed to make a left-hand turn. They didn't notice that was their street until they were almost there. It happened to be a street that you had to get into a left turn lane. So they wanted to get into that lane, so they signaled left and tried to move over. There was a young man in a pickup truck just slightly behind them, and this sort of irritated him. He didn't feel they should get in front of him. So he wouldn't allow them to do that. He sped up and kept right up with them, wouldn't allow them to make their turn. He blocked them out. Now, he wasn't content to do that, but he was rather upset that they'd even dared to want to get in front of him. So he added a few ill-chosen words and shook his fist at him to let him know how displeased he was with them, how angry he was for the way they treated him. What was the result of this? They sat there. Every once in a while he was waiting for the light to change, he would look around and glare at them furiously. Finally, the light changed. There was one car in front of this man. As this car got ready to pull up a front, the other fellow saw that that car was pulling out to make the turn now, so he turned around, looked at the two people in the other car, shouted a few more insults at him, shook his fist one more time to let them know his displeasure, stepped on the gas without even looking, and unbeknownst to him, the car in front of him had to stop. He ran right into it full tilt. Now, there was a case where forgiveness was rather expensive, wasn't it? So why should we forgive? If we do not forgive, what happens to us? We become frustrated, or perhaps angry, or perhaps full of hatred. Can't stand that person. I'd like to cut his neck. I'd like to chop his head off. Now, what does that do to us? What does that cause happening inside of us if we have those kind of reactions? That's not going to be a very peaceful person, is it? It's going to be a person that has that corrosive hate, anger, frustration boiling inside of him. What does that do to him? Physically, it probably causes him to be nervous, upset stomach, perhaps other problems. Mentally, there cannot be any peace. There cannot be any contentment. Spiritually, how can one seek God? How can one love God when you hate people? It can't be done. The first commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy will, with all thy mind, with all thy strength, with all thy soul. How can we do that when we're filled with hate? Every time we try to turn our mind to God, our mind goes to that hate. That goes to that wrong that's been done to us. And therefore, how can we think of God, let alone with love? You see, it can't be done. And so it blocks us off. This is also brought out. Jesus said the same thing. So if you have something against your brother, before you take something to the altar, you go and make friends back with your brother. Otherwise, your offering will not be accepted. And that's what we're talking about. If we are filled with hatred because we have not forgiven, how can we change our lives the way we want? That stands in our way like an obstacle. And so, just as we find that acid, a strong acid, is very corrosive, right? It burns away, it destroys. What do we do to ourselves in a case where we don't forgive? It's like a corrosive acid burning inside of us. Destroys us, really. to the degree that we allow it to. So forgiveness is not only important for the other person, it's far more important for the person who is the one who should forgive, who has done something against. He has to forgive.
How do we forgive? How do we forgive something that we have been taught socially, morally, and physically is a big no-no or a religious no-no? How do we overcome that?
Well, I think we forgive anything that's been done to us by obviously understanding the truth, the reason why we should forgive. That's the starting basis. But whatever happens, if we realize, hey, I have to forgive that person. Now, the incident we gave was rather minor, right? We all go through that every day where someone tries to cut us off in a freeway or something else. But suppose somebody has really done a number on you or a member of your family. There was a man from California who was captured by the Japanese in World War II. He spent 4 years as a prisoner of war. The treatment was brutal. Plus, they were starved. He said when he was first released and when the Americans came and released him and he got his first good meal, he was sitting there so enjoying that. It was so different. And he began to think about what had happened during these whole 4 years. And he thought, you know, people under wartime conditions, they don't act rationally. And he thought, people really basically are pretty decent. And basically they want to get along and be friends with other people. And to do that, we have to be forgiving. And he made up his mind right then and there that he was going to forgive those people who had mistreated him all that time. So he found out, after he'd come back to this country and became better, he found out the names of the guards, where they lived. He went over to Japan, and he went and he made friends with these people.
I'm impressed.
He made friends with these people. And he said, when you make friends with them, you discover, hey, they're just like anyone else. They're friendly, they're nice. He supported an orphanage over there. He wasn't a wealthy man. Collected things for this orphanage, sent money over and everything. Went over and visited these people, made friends with them. That's what we have to do. Anytime we find that we're having a problem with someone doesn't like us, someone's doing a number on us, and our first reaction is strike back. Yogananda put it very nicely. He said, someone comes and he slaps you. He said, what do you want to do? Your first instinct is to want to slap him back and give him 2 kicks for good measure, right? He said, and then what happens? Then he wants to slap you back, give you 2 kicks, plus 3 more slaps and 5 more kicks for good measure. Huh? Very correct, isn't it? Where does it all end? You see, without forgiveness. The only way the madness in this world will ever end is when we learn to forgive others. That's the break. That's what breaks the karmic chain. You see, the karmic chain goes on and on and on. If we want to break it, forgiveness, that breaks it.
Thank you. Truly one of the most beautiful segments we've had from a very blissful and loving man. I want to thank you, brother, for coming with us and being a part of Aspire.
Thank you, Greg. It's been a pleasure.
Forgiveness, very essential. Essential to you, essential to me, essential to all of us. Thank you. Thank you.